Everybody for tuning in to Coder Conversations. If you missed any previous episode, visit us at www.coderconvos.com. I'm your host, Kevin, and
Brian Russick, also co-host, professional drummer, drum teacher based out of Suffolk County, Long Island, New York area, and happy to be on the show here today with all of you.
today we have Carl Palmeri. I know you're a musician and you do many other things, so welcome to the show.
Thank you. I very much appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, it's
Awesome,
a
man.
pleasure to have you on. So, you have a really diversified career. You're not just one thing. So, can you get into a little bit of some of the things you do?
Sure. For the past almost 20 years, my main line of work has been a licensed funeral director, which gets me into, uh, has me dip into a lot of different disciplines to be able to do that job well and effectively. But for the past 5 years, I've reduced that quite a bit, and I've been making a push into my lifelong love of music, both playing and uh, working in the industry in every capacity I can manage.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It's like you're balancing practicality with passion. You're doing one thing that pays the bills and working on transitioning into your passion, which is music.
I'm trying. It's tough to be a career musician these days, um, either in playing or in the business side of things. So I have to keep going back to being a funeral director at least some of the time to try to stay afloat. Uh, these days in the post-COVID economy, it's a little wonky. Uh,
Yeah, it's a bit
Trying to keep moving
different.
forward. Yes.
Definitely difficult. Yeah, definitely. I know difficult for me, difficult for a lot of people. There were a lot of tech layoffs. Everyone thought tech was, always going to be this safe career, but now not so much.
So, yeah, like from your perspective, and from your experience, like what are some of the challenges of making it as a musician in this economy?
Where I'm at, I'm in the Lehigh Valley and Pocono area of Pennsylvania, which is roughly an hour and a half each from Philadelphia and New York. Pretty
Okay.
much due west of New York and north of Philadelphia. Um, so this area, it's a little tight as far as places to play and playing in places that value live music and recognize the effort and time that musicians put in to honing their craft and to getting it ready to take out to entertain people. So it's a little tough to make headway, and there's a lot of noise and not so much competition, because I do find it is in many regards a community, rather a competitive sort of thing. But there are a lot of musicians and a lot of bands chasing the same gigs, and I
Well,
find
sure.
yeah, it can be tough, and I find difficulties with it as well, not only in playing, but I also do work for an agency called Earth Vibrations Entertainment that does booking and management for cover and original bands here in the area. And that's,
Nice, nice.
yeah, and trying to best advocate for the bands that we work with a lot of the venues around the area is also difficult. Trying to make venues see and recognize the value in what live music does for the business and for the crowds that they bring in.
Yeah, I mean, even as a kid, when I started booking shows at like 15 years old, I didn't know what the hell I was doing, but I just got out there, shook some hands, met some people, and my the rest of my band was like, how did you set this up?" I'm like, I just went and I talked to this guy and set it up. I mean, it's kind of that basic on some level. Like what's your experience with that, at least in the post COVID world?
Oh, it started way before COVID. Back in high school, I had a punk band, and uh, lacking places for high school punk bands to play, I started putting shows together myself in community centers and that
Oh,
sort of thing.
wow,
A bunch of
awesome.
bands together, put the PA up. I had a bunch of equipment, so I would usually backline the shows and have somebody collect $5 at the door, and we would take over these community centers and spaces for a night and usually it went well enough and we didn't destroy too much that we would be able to come back and do it again. So that's kind of where I started. And then after high school, I was in college and hated every bit of being stuck in a classroom at that age and wanted to be out doing things.
Same. Yeah, same here.
So I switched tracks and I wanted to go into business for myself, combining the things that I loved. And at the time I was skateboarding a lot. I was a little bit thinner and in better shape and a little more flexible then. So I opened up a skateboard shop with the intent of spinning that out into a skate park. And in that skate shop, which was probably pretty ill-advised because skateboarding was illegal in my town, and I decided to stick a skate shop right in the center of the downtown where it was under pretty intense scrutiny.
Wow.
But I set that up and I started to throw shows in the shop. I had a couple of skate ramps in the shop, and it became sort of a community hub for a lot of the kids and teenagers and early 20-somethings. And I did that for a number of years as well.
That's great.
Before the reality, what's that?
Oh, I said that's great.
It was a good time, and I very much enjoyed it. But the realities of life came along after a few years. My girlfriend at the time, who was then later my wife, became pregnant, had a kid on the way, and I needed to do something.
That changes things a lot for a musician. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. For a musician who wanted to ride skateboards all day and just kind of
coast.
Yeah. I mean, I was never the skate and destroy type. I was always the skate and create type. But having a kid on the way made that unfeasible.
Right.
So my grandfather, who went into business for himself after World War II and spun out into a bunch of family businesses, one of them that he had was he kind of railroaded my uncle, who didn't want to be a funeral director, into being a funeral director. He came from a very small town where that was a need that wasn't filled. And that was one of my grandfather's things in business: find the need and fill it. So he decided that our town needed a funeral home. He sort of made my uncle do it. And then when I had a kid on the way, he's like, you got to stop messing with this childish stuff, and you're going to go to school to be a funeral director and help your uncle out. So lacking other viable options, I kind of tucked my tail between my legs and went and did it. And sort of put all of my loves to the side to concentrate on the things I had to do. Did that for roughly 15 years until COVID hit. A few years prior to COVID, I left the family business and went to work for one about 30 miles away, because working in a family business can be tough. To say the least. So I took a deal about 30 miles away, went to work in a funeral home up there, which was quite a different environment and pace. That was in the Poconos, where we served a lot of families that were transplanted from New York and New Jersey. And it was a higher volume of work, and it was much more intense than the small town stuff I came from.
Can imagine that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was pushing the verge of burnout coming up on the COVID era.
Right.
And right at the start of it, my boss, to his credit, who I've remained great friends with, saw that I was kind of at the end of a frayed rope there.
Right.
So when COVID started to get intense, he offered me a chance to essentially buy me out of my deal, and gave me a good and fair severance package that cut me loose for a while. And I got away from the funeral business, which was good, because with what I had seen from the outside during COVID, I probably wouldn't have made it. I would have lost my mind.
Yeah.
So,
right.
I took that opportunity to go full bore back into music. Around 2018, I had started a new band that was gigging quite a bit and getting pretty popular right up until COVID hit. So I took the deal to leave the funeral home, took a couple of months just to kind of be still and quiet while the world was. And then as things started to open back up in late summer of 2020 for bands to have outdoor shows at wineries and breweries and that sort of thing,
Right.
the band was picking up steam and we were getting great crowds at the outdoor shows. So I decided then I was going to do my best to do everything I could with music in whatever capacity I could and never go back to being a funeral director.
Yeah, I
Didn't work
know.
out very well.
I know for me, I got my start in health insurance, just in like the corporate world,
Hmm.
but always wanted to do music. So I moved out to LA at 22 with an indie rock band. It didn't work out. We broke up within probably 10 months, but it got me, it got me out there, and I started doing session work. But then kind of got burnt, honestly got burnt out on it because of the type of people I was dealing with. I was mostly getting work off of Craigslist. And
Hmm.
it'd kind of be a situation where, okay, you're the session drummer, you're the session guy. So yeah, we have to pay you, but we're not getting paid. So they would be annoyed that they had to, out of their pocket, pay me, the session guy. But that's just how it is. And that was a little uncomfortable. It wasn't really a great experience. So I came back to the East Coast where my family is, New York, and I've just been here for like the past 7 or 8 years, and I'm teaching drums now.
If you can teach to supplement other work in music, I highly suggest it. I was never much of a teacher. So I've tried it a couple times. I didn't make a great teacher and I stopped pursuing it because,
You
uh,
gotta love it. Yeah, you
yeah,
do have to
and
love it.
I found myself getting more frustrated in teaching than my students were getting being taught. So I thought that was
That's
probably the
like
wrong
a
path to pursue.
clear indicator that, yeah, time for something else.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you spent a long time in the industry that you didn't really care for. Like, how did you like maintain mentally? I mean, that had to be incredibly taxing.
Very much so. A lot of compartmentalization. I worked as hard as I could at leaving work at work, but that's incredibly difficult in that business because you spend so much time on call. You have very strange hours that, just kind of living at the whim of nature makes it very difficult to keep an anchored and steadily moored life. Um, so it was tough. I repeatedly ran up against burnout and you get empathy fatigue. Just in that line of work and doing that, it's, how can I best put it? It's not so difficult when you are attending to the needs of a family that have had a death in the family, one of their loved ones that has lived to a ripe old age, had a full life, surrounded by a good family and friend support structure, and a little old man or woman who dies in their 90s and has no regrets to look back on in life. That was not so bad to deal with. But when you
Yeah.
have to deal with tragic deaths, parents of small children, children of young parents, things like that, it's incredibly difficult. And
And
I
I'm
had kids
sure like
myself, and
I'm sure
sorry, go ahead.
fentanyl overdoses as well, probably.
There was a huge wave of that.
Yeah.
Um, I haven't seen it so much lately now that I'm back in the business, but between 2015 and 2018, early 2019, it was epidemic level. We would see it all the time.
Yeah. I mean, I had
Not
a
just
oh, go
no, go
ahead.
ahead.
Oh, I was
No,
gonna say I had a buddy who died. This bass player, Mike Cormidas, and he was a really chill guy, really cool guy. Had been, he was on heroin, but then he got off it for years. And then one Thanksgiving, he was visiting an old friend, and I guess this guy was doing heroin, so they got some, and that was it. There was probably, I'm assuming, we never found out, but I'm assuming there was fentanyl in it, and is way too strong for him, and that just took him out.
highly likely. And what I would find too, not just with the fentanyl, but with the increase in the heroin use. It was often among the most tragic cases. Someone would get clean for some amount of time. They would go to rehab or they would wean themselves off, and they would be starting to put their life back together and think they had it under control. And then they would slip just once and think, well, I can do a little bit.
Just
And
once. Yeah,
just
right.
once, and that was
Yes.
all it would take. And you would, I would meet with the families of these people who thought that that person was, through it and over the hill, knowing that addiction is a lifelong battle, but they would think that they would have it under control and that they were pulling their life together just to wake up and find that person gone, because they slipped one time, and that's
You see,
incredibly tragic.
that's all it takes is just that one time of you get, a bad dose of something, bad batch of something. Now I mean, I've heard they're lacing everything with fentanyl. So any kind of drug you're getting off the street may have fentanyl in it, which is crazy to think about.
Yeah, yeah, it's quite dangerous these days to have a recreational drug problem. I mean, not that it was ever safe, but more
Right.
so than ever. And yeah, I've seen too much of it. And, like I said, those people that had cleaned up and were starting to get their life together to slip up and then, overdose, those were bad. And then equivalent to that, I mean, I would meet with families who would come in to make arrangements for someone that died of an overdose. And it was sad and tragic to see almost the relief that they had, because they had spent a number of years watching that person just do that to themselves, and they had kind of given up, and they were just,
Yeah.
they gave up hope that that person was ever going to clean up, and they were just sort of waiting for the call. And that's heartbreaking as well.
Which the call ultimately came.
Right. And they would come in to make funeral arrangements, and you would see almost a sense of relief about them, that they didn't have to worry anymore when the call was going to come, because they got it.
Yeah.
And they knew that that kind of tension and stress of waiting for the day that their brother, sister, child, whatever, they finally hit that point and they didn't have to worry anymore. And that, like I said, that was heartbreaking in its own way.
That's really heavy. Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen situations where, like you mentioned, the person was on drugs, and there's all kinds of things that come with it, and the family's constantly worried. They're worried, and like you mentioned, there's a sense of relief as soon as the person passes, because they don't have to worry about all of the stuff that's going on. So it's tragic, but it's also interesting how there's like a sense of relief there.
Yeah, and I never quite got used to seeing that in people that I would, be handling the funeral arrangements for. Um, and thankfully, these days, I don't do much on the public or family facing side of things with the funeral home. The funeral home I'm with now, who I did some work for previously, I mostly take care of the biological and back end work. I don't deal with families so much, which is, that's its own relief to me in a way. Uh,
Oh
the most
yeah.
superficial reasons of which is I get to have my beard back and my long hair. Um,
Yeah.
I spent a number of years with no beard or very short beard and short haircut, and it almost felt like it was a disguise
Like
that
a
I had to
suit.
put on. Yes,
Yeah. Like a
like the
suit.
suit. It was part of the uniform.
Yeah, the
And
uniform, right.
now going back into it in a different capacity, I feel like I can do it as myself again, which is
That's great.
Yeah, that role that you're in, it's like something that's necessary but highly underappreciated. Like I've never really heard like behind the scenes, like the story that you're giving.
yeah. I had a lot of trouble with it because in a lot of ways, I felt as if no matter how good of a job I ever did as a funeral director, if I got every detail right, from the arrangements to the presentation of the person laying in their casket to timing the ceremony down to the second. And if I got everything perfect, I still couldn't be a success at it, because no matter how good I was at my job, I was doing something that people didn't want. You know,
Yeah.
I couldn't make the situation better for them. I might be able to take some stress off of, their planning and handling all the details for them. But if it came right down to it, I had a professor in funeral school that said, if we had a sale and, offered our services for 99.9% off, no one would want it anyway. It's not like, a car or some retail item where you can have a sale and spike demand.
Right.
Nobody wants to have a funeral. So in that regard, no matter how well I did at the job, it at best might get someone a little bit closer to level or even. I couldn't improve things for them.
So
And
like there was always a sense of kind of negativity attached
sure.
to it, associated with it.
Yeah. Yeah. Even in cases where, again, like to use the example I just did, where someone was, died at 97 after having lived a full life and had a peaceful death, it's still incredibly sad. That family has lost a grandparent or, or a parent in some cases. And, there's no making that better. I can handle the details. I can make sure that they don't have to worry about things through, the course of events from the time of death until the burial happens, but I can't make it a good time for them. And in that way, it felt like it was impossible to be successful at the job, even if I did everything right. And
Yeah.
that's something I struggled with a lot. I don't like doing a bad job at things. And to have that kind of dichotomy of I can do a perfect job, but the people I'm serving are still sad and miserable afterward. That was kind of a lot to take, or kind of a lot to cope with.
That's tough. Yeah, that's putting you in a strange situation, you know?
Yeah, and and most other funeral directors and people in that industry as well. Um, there's a very high rate of burnout. There is a lot of alcoholism amongst funeral directors and other risk-heavy behaviors. Because it's a lot to take. Mentally, there's a huge strain.
Now,
And
how does someone get into that line of work to begin with?
it's different for everybody. Like I said, I had a family connection and I kind of got pushed into
Yeah.
it.
Okay.
Because in my family, the businesses we had in the family, most of them were transportation based of one sort or another. My family owned a school bus company and a motor coach company, as well as excavation and water and oil hauling.
Oh,
So
wow.
my grandfather got into a lot of things and set his family up with a lot of different businesses, but I couldn't be trusted to drive a $200,000 dump truck. And I didn't want the responsibility of driving around 75 kids on a school bus
Yeah.
because I didn't trust myself with that level of responsibility.
Yeah.
So things sort of converged that my uncle, who had the funeral home, also had he had a couple other businesses and wanted to step back from that. So the time was right for me to get pushed into it. So I bucked up and I closed my skateboard shop and I went to college to be a funeral director. It's a 3-year degree and then a 1-year resident internship that you have to serve, as well as taking state and national board exams for the license.
Wow.
So I went and just did it, and I seemed to have an aptitude for it that I didn't expect to have in all the regards, because you get into a lot of different disciplines as a funeral director, which sometimes aren't very apparent. They certainly weren't apparent to people I was sending resumes to over the past few years looking for work, but you get into a little bit of everything. I mean, from the time someone passes away, you have to be able to have the interpersonal skills to go into that person's house and talk with their family when they are at their most distraught, bring a sense of kind of order and plan to let them know what's going to happen next. Then there's the biological work necessary if that person that's died is going to have a funeral, which or a viewing with their funeral rather, which you know, the chemistry and anatomy and physiology involved in doing that part of the job to make that person preserved and presentable for a funeral is pretty intense. And
That's
then
gotta be, that's gotta be really tough when they want like the open casket.
yes. So then to go from that into meeting with the family and being able to collect all of the information necessary for all the documentation and paperwork, and then you're dealing with state and federal level things like Social Security, often Veterans Administration, those sort of things, to be able to write a coherent and correct obituary for a family, get everything filed on time, and then work the logistics necessary to pull the services together, which can be anywhere, from simple to quite elaborate, depending on the person, and get everything timed just right. And then actually going through the ceremony and the services, and making sure that, even little things like the hearse has gas in it and has been washed,
Yeah.
Pardon me. You have to touch on a whole bunch of different disciplines to make it all work and to pull it off, usually in a highly compressed time frame, under pressure, with a lot of eyes on you. And you build kind of a skill set that is diverse and doesn't necessarily appear, I guess, how can I put this? The skills translate to a lot of other jobs, but it's not readily apparent to other industries and other businesses when someone in my line of work tries to get out of it and take those skills that I've gathered into a different profession. And I might be getting off track here a little bit. I'm sorry.
No, it's cool. That's cool.
But it sounds like that's a really underappreciated job, but it sounds like you mentioned, a ton of pressure. So, like how did you well, you did mention like how you avoided burnout, but like how did you avoid taking your work home every day with all of that going on? Because I know
I tried, but a lot of time I wasn't successful. I was stressed. I was kind of unpleasant to be around at times. It took a toll on my marriage. It was one of the contributors to my divorce, which I guess COVID and everything around that kind of helped as well. I was often miserable, and it took getting some time away from it. And frankly, going back in only in a part-time capacity, that's helped me manage it since. I took solace in music a lot when I was actively in it, and I had a hell of a lot of nightmares. It was a lot to take.
Yeah, so like music seems like that's something that really brought you joy. So yeah, can you talk to us about your music? Like what kind of music do you enjoy playing, and how did you what has your experience been like in the industry so far?
So my last band that I was in for about 5-6 years was a Southern rock country band, mostly covers, but we did some originals too. Did an album in 2022 that we put out. Worked it as hard as we could, played a bunch of gigs, and then that band folded in late 2023. Everybody that was in the band just kind of decided that had more or less run its course. And I was never really a country guy anyway, but I was playing with some good friends that I'd had for a long time. And we found a singer who was pretty seriously country. We put a rock band behind him, and it worked for the time in our area. But like I said, that ran its course. So I'm in 2 bands now. One's my main band is called Little Bird and the Bad Eggs. I'm having a ton of fun with that band. I am kind of co-leading that with my girlfriend, who is the front woman and keyboardist. And that's sort of a rotating cast of musicians. There's currently about 7 of us in the band, and we try to
Nice.
branch out with the sound. It's, the core of it is the sort of the standard arrangement of, guitar, keys, bass, and drums. But we do also have a violinist and a cellist and a trumpeter.
Oh, wow.
So we were able to take songs that we're covering and sort of switch up the vibe, which I have a lot of fun with. And we also do original music as well that we're in the midst of doing demoing and pre-production to take into the studio later this summer. Having a ton of fun with that band. We don't play out much with that band, but the gigs that we do take, a lot of festival gigs and venues that are really conducive to sort of a listening room sort of environment, which is far different than trying to appease a general manager of a bar who gets mad when you're not goosing the crowd to drink more.
Right.
So that's been a lot of fun. I also have a side, I guess for lack of a better term, stoner rock band with a couple of friends of mine that started just as a project for fun screwing around in his garage, and has resulted in some pretty good songs. We've gone into the studio with that band as well.
So
So
stuff like Sleep.
a little closer to maybe Queens of the Stone Age.
Okay.
Or like Caius, something like that, if I'm using another band as a reference. But yeah, that's been a lot of fun, and everybody in that band gets along together very well, and we have a good time joking around. And the drummer in that band came from my last band, and I've been playing with him off and on for almost 30 years.
Wow.
So we have a lot of comfort there.
Yeah,
And
there's a
it's
certain connection that you build with musicians. Like my buddy Sean, he lives out in Orange County. He used to live in LA, and I met him when he was only 18 years old. But he's this phenomenal guitarist, blues and psychedelic rock guitarist. And I just, as we got closer, as we became closer and started to rehearse more and more, we just got to the point where we would both know when the song was going to end, and we would both know when there'd be a bridge out of nowhere, and then you come out of the bridge and then you end the song. Stuff like that is pretty hard to improvise, but we got to the point where we could improvise those things. So I thought that was pretty unique.
Yes, you get to the point where you play long enough and intensely enough with certain people, you do build a little bit of a telepathy, and you can spot each other's tells in where you're going with the music and when. So if you're not following sort of the rigid format of covering a song just like the original, and you
Sure.
branch out a little bit, you can kind of sense where you're going with each other. And with that drummer Rich, who, like I said, I've been playing off and on since we were 18, we've got that in that band. And that band's pretty interesting. The singer and one of the main songwriters in that band is a recently retired Secret Service agent.
Wow.
Who regales us with tales from the job over his years. He worked for every president from Clinton through Biden.
Wow.
So he's got a lot of stories, and he keeps us endlessly entertained. So
Can imagine that.
a good outlet as well.
Awesome.
Yes, it's great that you're able to spend a lot of time doing something that brings you joy, because, like, especially in this economy, it's like a lot of us are just kind of doing what we can to make ends meet. So to find something you love and be able to take the pressure off, that's like really necessary.
Yes, I'm quite lucky that even if I'm not playing music, the bulk of my attention goes toward music-based and music industry-based things. In addition to like the booking and management that I do for some of the local bands, I also work production at some of the local venues. So I've gotten a sense of how that end of the business works at that sort of scale.
Right.
There's a large casino by us with an event center that gets some huge national acts, and I do some stagehand and production work for them, as well as a couple other theaters in the area. And a few friends of mine through that have hooked me up with some touring work over the past couple of years. So I'm really sort of getting to see sort of all facets of
So
business, and it's been fascinating.
that's awesome. So you're pretty. I mean, it sounds like to me you're pretty much hands on kind of guy.
I try to be.
Yeah.
I try to pick up every skill that I can and always have through life, and master it to the best of my ability and build on it with wherever I go next, and kind of take that knowledge with me. So I'm trying to just sort of vacuum up all of the knowledge that I can in every regard.
Yeah, I got a buddy who does, I guess you call it FOH, front of
Front
house,
of house. Yep.
audio engineering. Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
I've known him since high school, actually, and it's just funny. We were both out in LA at the same time. I just always found it really interesting how he would talk about, okay, this, you line up this here, you do this, and I'm like, how do you know all this, Josh? And he's like, he's like, I just pick up a little bit here, then I go on, pick up a little bit over here. And I was like, that's really smart and like go-getter kind of attitude that you have.
Yeah, I mean, you have to in not only that line of work, but any line of work. The smarter and more knowledgeable you can be, the
Yeah.
better off you're going to be in anything. So I try to get as wide of a breadth of knowledge as I can in anything. And I've gotten to the point in my life where, after seeing how quick life can end with a pandemic, and just before the pandemic, I got in a car wreck. I got run off the road with my whole family, and the car flipped 5 times down a mountain into a tree, and we all
Oh
came
my
out
God.
unscathed. Like,
Wow.
for having some close brushes, I thought I am too old to be slogging away in things that I hate or
Yeah.
that bring me some sort of mental strain and pain. So in every way that I can, every chance that I get, I am going to spend my time doing things that I love or make me happy or get me closer to doing more of what I love and makes me happy.
Yeah, I think
So
that's super super important. Super important.
yeah, it it's a little stressful, when bills are due, and I've been chasing the things that make me fulfilled but don't necessarily fill my wallet. But I, that's not necessarily a bad stress to have compared to the stresses I could have.
Yep.
When I was a full-time, nearly always on call funeral director, I didn't worry about money. I just worried about everything else.
Yeah.
Yep.
Now I'm not worrying about much except for money, and that's okay. If I keep slogging away, something's going to connect in the way I need it to eventually.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think maybe even like doing something like riding Uber or something, or driving Uber, because one of my friends, he actually did that after his job, and what ended up happening was he met the manager of Google, and he ended up getting a job at Google through Uber, making
It's incredible.
Yeah, the universe works in very weird ways, and if you
Yeah.
keep at it and you don't cover your head and hide, you might be amazed at how you find yourself in the right place at the right time for the right thing.
Yeah, like if you just keep going, people are telling you, okay, it's working, just keep going, keep going. I think, you follow that. To me, is following God. You're following your truth. And I think it's really important.
But yeah, perseverance matters. I mean, I always had the fear that I would give up on something just before it clicked.
Yeah.
Right.
So, and maybe that's to my detriment. I might have chased dreams a little too far, thinking that the key to unlock it all is right around the corner, and maybe I've good money after bad, so to speak. But I'm going to keep trying. I don't know any other way. So I
Right.
try to keep pushing on through, and in hopes that it's all going to work out.
Yeah, I think in life we have to do that because like money, we're kind of programmed, especially in America, it's all about money, 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 money. But when you have
Yeah.
it, you don't necessarily feel fulfilled always. It's just like, okay, cool, what next? And you just actually taking the steps to live out the stuff that you really wanted to do. At least it scratched the curiosity, even if it was successful or not. At least you have to experience. I think that's the real success, experiencing,
And
trying.
you just, you have a hobby. You have a hobby that you really enjoy, that other people can get enjoyment out of it from watching you play. That to me is just super important, super vital to someone's life. And I think you're really on the right track. Maybe it doesn't all look like sunshine and rainbows right now, but I think, like you're saying, if you keep going, keep moving in the direction of where you want to go, then eventually you will get there in some way, shape, or form.
Right. And it's in some ways it's about the journey as well. I might not ever end up where I envisioned it, but all along the way, if I'm having a good time and if I'm learning and I'm spending that time with good people who become friends, that become family, or meet some people that are cautionary tales in one way or another, or give me things to look out for in others down the line. um, it's all to the good. It's all
Yeah.
learning, and the
Yeah.
experience matters.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh yeah. One thing I found is like once you remove the perspective of making X amount of money or accomplishing X goal, and you just enjoy whatever you're doing, I think then you're really free to appreciate what you're doing. Like this podcast, we haven't made any money, but just being able to talk to you, for example, getting stories out there, there's like an amazing journey there that it's worth way more than money. Like you can't take money with you, so
Right.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. You can't take money with you. So it's like, yeah, it really is all about the journey.
Yeah, I often find more value in the intangible than the tangible.
Yeah.
So money's a way to keep score, they say, but to me, it's what I've learned, and the people I got to learn it with a lot of the time, or the people I got to learn from. That means so much to me, that there's value in that, and that makes me happy. So I'm okay with it.
yeah,
That's
I think
awesome.
we just got to kind of. Oh, go ahead, Brian.
I was gonna say, I grew up with a dad who owned his own business, so sometimes, like you said, working with family is not always so great. Makes me think when if I would stay home from school, and he'd see me sitting there, and I'm not sick. I don't want to go to school. He's like, "Hey, you're coming with me today." I'm like, "Oh man," and he's doing like windows and carpet cleaning and stuff like that. But he really inspired me to follow my dream. At 14, I got my first drum set, and they said, play as much as you want, as loud as you want, down in the basement. So my parents kind of really gave me a support system to want to try to do something creative, something that, not necessarily everyone else is doing. And so, it turned out to be something that my life revolves around now. So it's really incredible when you look back and see, oh, this person had this impact on me. This person had that impact. I think, and like we're talking about the journey, I think it all boils down to, can you enjoy the moment? Can you be present and enjoy the moment? I think that's what we're breaking it down to.
I try every day. In every moment of every day, I try to find the positives and enjoy it. And to go back to what you had said about having the support of your parents, kind of
Huge.
fostering that love of music. Yeah, it is. It's massive.
Huge. Yeah, because
My
there's a
mother
lot of
was
people
like
that
that.
don't have that.
Right. My mother did that for me growing up. She got me my first guitar from a yard sale because I grew up in the MTV era, and I saw Van Halen and all
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
and like I wanted that, and my mother saw that, and she she supported me in that, kind of fostered that along the way. And I try to do the same for my kids,
That's great.
in whatever it is that they, whichever way they're choosing to go. My daughter's a bit older. She's about to graduate college, and she's about to graduate with a degree in psychology, but she's still in a lot of ways just figuring out what she wants to do. And it's not my place to tell her what she should do, but it's my place to support whatever choices she makes and help her along the way, however I can. So, that's very important. And to have had that was a wonderful thing.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful.
And yeah, like something I've been thinking about is like in life is that we're kind of like chasing childhood again. Like we're working so that we can recapture that feeling we had during childhood, mystery, wonder, excitement. And, we're chasing it in the wrong way because we think that having money is going to bring back those feelings, but it doesn't. It's just more so, like you mentioned, great people, adventure, spending time doing things you love. Obviously, we have to pay the bills, but once that's paid, why not, enjoy your life versus like trying to hoard money and now you're 70, you hate life, but you have a lot of something that doesn't even really exist.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, to me, my idea of success monetarily anyway is being able to cover all the bills and not feel guilty about sleeping late on the weekend.
Yes.
Like I, pardon me, I don't feel the need to, have a supercar or get a new Porsche or Ferrari or something like that, or, have an enormous house, as much as it might appeal to my son who's 10 and into, all into cars and engines and that sort of thing. That's not what I feel a success is. Just to
Right.
be able to get at least a baseline level of comfort and stability and security so that I can pursue the things I love without the guilt of, I should really be earning money to do, XYZ, whatever it is. I'd much rather just, do the things I love.
Yeah, and what's interesting, I live in Long Island, New York, and here everyone is hyper focused on money,
Oh,
super focused on money, and I'm kind of sitting there like, okay, I'm kind of an outsider. I grew up in Connecticut, spent a lot of time in Southern California, and came back to be with family. But one thing, like I mentioned, my dad before, we grew up working class. So I saw how we lived. I saw how he treated people. He really was a great example of what to be like and to not chase money. Cause he always said, money, he'd always say that you can't take money with you. You can't take that car, that house,
mm-hmm.
But your experiences are what matter. And I
Oh, yeah.
learned that was a big lesson I learned from my dad. And I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah. In my family, there are a lot of high achievers, many of which thought I haven't lived up to the potential that I showed as a child, and are probably disappointed in me if you ask. But
Yeah.
there's some of them, and there's some of my peers, people I went to high school and college with, who are the same. They have accomplished so much in business, either for either working in the corporate world or going into business for themselves, but they're miserable.
Sure.
They
Yeah.
don't have any hobbies. They are consumed with the pursuit of more and more stuff. And if that works for them, and if they're happy being miserable because they have a huge bank account, more power to them. But that's not for me. And it was a little bit of a struggle over the years, I think, to come to a point where I wasn't comparing myself with them anymore, and just sort of being, I guess, self-actualized isn't the term, but something along those lines, where I had to teach myself that it was okay to be satisfied attaining the things that made me happy, not the things that I thought I needed to make me happy, or to compete with other people who were achieving or making money hand over fist.
That's the thing. I mean, people are always going to compare. It brings me back to high school. So I'm graduating high school, and all my buddies, or whatever you want to call people, like associates, or they're all going to college. Everyone's going to college, and I said, yeah, I don't think I'm going to go. And they're like, oh, you're going to end up working at McDonald's, da 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 da. And I'm like, I want time to figure things out. And, I did end up going to college for 2 years, just taking general classes. And through that, I realized, no, this is not for me. I'd much rather be doing music. So I got the hell out of Connecticut and moved to California, just to try the dream, to try to see, is it possible to make it with music? And I found that it was possible, but I didn't really like it. I didn't like the people I was working with. I didn't really like the hours I was working. So, it's not all rainbow and sunshine, even if you get to the top of the mountain. So I'm happy to teach now. I have a lot of joy for teaching. So I can really appreciate that. I don't need to be on tour with like some huge band or something like that.
Right. If you can find fulfillment, or if you can find the things that bring you fulfillment for you, it doesn't matter what anybody else is doing. If
Yeah.
you feel whole from what you're doing, everybody else can, hit the road for for a term that won't have me swearing on your podcast.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like really interesting. Like society, it teaches us to become cogs in the machine, which I mean, it teaches us to compete against each other because that means more productivity for the business. But ultimately, that's not going to make us as individuals happy. It's going to make some guy richer who was exploiting our labor. But I
Yeah.
find, like, the Bible talks about envy. There's a reason it's a sin. Like when you start looking at what somebody else has, now all of a sudden what you have is no longer good enough, and it just makes you unhappy. Like,
Yeah, that never jived for me. Yeah.
so yeah, once you're able to detach from competing, trying to have this title, like you mentioned, cars, all this other stuff, then it's incredibly liberating because you're not in this fake prison trying to put out this image, and now you're stuck in a job, like you mentioned, a job you hate, trying to get money to live up an image to people that don't even care about you. Like people don't like you just for you, versus, oh, now you have the car, now they like you. Like that's, to me, that's fake. Like why would I want to be friends with somebody who only likes me because I have a certain status or
Right, like
material
you have
possession?
yeah, you have a certain title, you're at this level in the industry or in the corporate world, but it's like, when you get home from work, how do you feel? Like, how do you feel about what you've been doing for the last 8, 9, 10 hours? And I feel like most people, at least around where I live, they do not enjoy what they do. They just, maybe they own a business, or I don't even really, I don't ask too many people. I don't get in people's business, but a lot of people make a lot of money here in Long Island, but they're not happy. I can just tell they're not happy. You see it in their face.
Yeah, that's not for me.
Yeah, same here.
You kind of learn it's a scam. Like you work so hard, and then like you mentioned, like during the COVID time, all of a sudden the price of houses just double out of nowhere, and they never went back down. Like
Yeah.
so, your savings just disappears like that, and prices everything just magically rises. So what, you're working so hard for what exactly?
Yeah, more and more these days, it seems that in this country, people are just kind of working to send the fruits of their labor upward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
no one can enjoy it. And we're all getting squeezed for every penny possible. And it's all flowing up. And it's becoming tougher and tougher to live every day and to make ends meet. And, wages have been stagnant or decreasing in very real terms for, the better part of 2 generations. And the more, I guess, that we sort of feed this in the pursuit of, well, I have to work even more to earn more to get the stuff that I want at the same time, the value and the product of that labor keeps flowing up to people that do not care about us,
Yeah.
and aren't going to care unless we stop producing for them.
They're not in the business of caring, I guess you could say.
No,
Yeah,
not at all. And I
not
think
at all.
it speaks to, I guess, the turmoil that a lot of the country is in right now, and not just politically, although that does color it quite a bit one way or the other. But we're all just being kind of squeezed, and whatever value our energy brings as a people is being exploited in a lot of ways. And at this point, it's reached sort of a critical mass that there is no fighting it as an individual. The best thing that we can do is make the conscious decision to live in a way that makes us happy, and fulfilled, and covers our needs, and doesn't give too much away, upward, although they get it anyway in the gas prices and the food prices, in the housing market. They're going to come for all of it one day, the BlackRocks and Fidelities and Vanguards and all that.
Right.
They're going to get it eventually, but that doesn't mean we have to be happy about it or make it easy for them.
Right. I think we need to take like work and productivity and all of this off of we need to take it off of the altar. Stop worshiping it.
Well, and also look at a place
what
like
life is about.
Europe, Kevin, like Italy, let's say. I think they call it fiesta. At lunchtime, everyone goes home for like 4 hours, and all the shops are closed.
Right.
We have nothing comparable to that here.
No, or the social democracies of like the Nordic regions, Sweden, Finland. Like, sure, they pay higher taxes, but they get more services for it, and the people are happier. We sort of in this country have fooled each other, or all been fooled into the whole pull yourself up by your bootstraps, and living the American dream, which doesn't really exist anymore.
It doesn't exist.
Not in the way that it did when, I guess for the baby boomer generation, when
like the white picket fence, the nice house, the car, the family.
Well, sure, the head of household could work a factory job and have a wife at home with the kids, and they were all taken care of, and they could go on vacation a couple times a year, and they didn't have too much to worry about, just with one person working in the household. Yeah. And now, most households, most nuclear families, you have both parents working, and one of them's typically working just to pay the child care. So they,
that's right.
90% of that income goes out in child care, so they can retain the other 10% to put on top of the other spouse's income. And maybe if they're lucky, they get a vacation every 3 years. And they're made to feel like, if they are not constantly available to the boss, to the company, taking their work home with them, that they are not of value. And for all the technological advances and the uptick in productivity, we're not any better off for it as a people.
Yeah, where's it going?
We're not seeing it. Yeah, we're not seeing it.
And now, with the technology that we have and the connectivity, we also never get a break. Before cell phones and Blackberries, much less, iPhones and Androids, you had your phone at home, you had your phone at work, and then you had your commute along the way where you could be alone with your thoughts, or listen to the radio, or, have a Walkman with a book on tape. Now we are always expected to be immediately available and to respond instantaneously to whatever query or question comes through, or to, be always right there to handle something for someone above us who is, dangling the specter of losing your paycheck in front of you to kind of goad your compliance into helping them along. And it's been detrimental to us as a people in this country.
Yeah. To me, it's a big scam. Just the whole thing is a big scam, and I refuse to buy into it anymore. I'm just at that point in life where I'm not going to be like the people around me, making tons of money and buying nice cars. Like I really don't care.
Yeah, it's really like
And
like a cartoon. You have the horse, and they have like a carrot dangling in front of you. You're walking towards it, you're never getting closer.
Yeah.
that's exactly what it is.
That's what it is.
And yeah, it's tough to break free from that. And it starts with each of us individually, mentally and emotionally, um, kind of resetting the frame on how we look at ourselves and our own lives and how that fits in to our family, our greater community around us, and the culture as a whole. Um, and I think that we as a people are so connected to our phones anymore and are constantly scrolling and comparing and seeing, you know, a lot of
Comparing, yeah,
yes, a
comparing
lot of
is,
which is
oh
fake. That
God.
if you can take the time to look within yourself and kind of break out of that need for comparison to others, you you will find yourself being happier with who you are for yourself, not in relation to others. And that
Exactly.
might have been a very awkward way to make that point.
No,
Sorry.
great point. No, I mean, point well taken.
Yeah, because I think like a lot of us think that this is the way it has to be because we were always raised that way. But this it's not. Most people in America, they're not that happy. Like you know,
No,
Yeah, that
not.
American dream doesn't exist anymore. That's the bottom line. It just does not exist.
And it hasn't been replaced with a viable alternative. I guess we're all still chasing sort of the old ideal, and we haven't embraced what could be possible with the changes in society, technology, and our interconnectivity. Um, we are just kind of using these things to chase an old ideal,
yeah,
and that's not really healthy. I don't know how we as a whole break out of that. And again, I think it comes back to the individual, and it comes back to each of us making the conscious decision to look inward a little bit and sort of examine our own thoughts and feelings and how we relate to others, and take a true measure of what we're satisfied with or can be satisfied with. I just
Yeah.
I don't have much hope that we're ever going to get there on the whole, but I do tend to gravitate towards people that have done that for themselves. And if the entire culture never comes around to it, well, I'll just surround myself with good people who are able to do that.
It's really all you can do. It looks like we're at the top of the hour though. Kev, do you have any last questions?
well, I don't have any closing questions, but I have kind of like a closing thought. One of the recurring themes of like this society is competition, envy, and like me being a Christian, I'll make the one more comparison. Going back to the Bible, is Satan wanted to be like God, which is why he got tossed out. Like that, the desire to compare yourself to someone else and wanting to be greater, and that's what a lot of these people in the upper crust, like they have more than enough. They'll never have to work, but that's not enough. I need more so I can be better than you. And that's why it's not trickling down, and it's a
It's
spiritual
not.
sickness,
Yeah.
mental illness, I would say, that a lot of these people that's running society have, but they don't realize it because that trait is worship because, oh, they have the money, they're a star, you know what I mean? But
Yeah.
they're really sick.
Yeah, that's a flaw of the soul in a lot of ways. And that opens up a door to a whole other discussion we could be talking about, but don't have the time for, I fear. But
Yeah, well, we should do a part two and really dive into this because it's conversation is just heating up.
I'd be more than happy to.
Yeah, where can our audience find you at?
Uh, Social media, I guess the best places to direct anybody or to Instagram pages for My band's Little Bird and the Bad Eggs, which you can just search that, and Instagram, it'll come up. Or Captain Midnight Music is my personal music page. Those are the best places, I think. Or through the agency on Earth Vibrations Entertainment.
Awesome, man. And
Nice.
you want to leave our audience with any closing thoughts before we close it out?
I'm just very appreciative to get the chance to talk to both of you. I had no idea what to expect coming into this conversation, but I'm very glad I did it. I had a great time talking with both of you. I very much appreciate it.
No, we really appreciate you coming on tonight.
Thank you so much.
And we'd like to thank everybody for tuning in. We'll catch y'all next time.